Last week, Caesars Entertainment shareholders voted down a proposal to study the effects of a possible smoking ban inside their properties. With smoking restrictions tightening around the country and smoking itself trending downwards among young people, why are Las Vegas casinos still holding out? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we talk with senior reporter Howard Stutz. He covers the gaming industry at the Nevada Independent. And Howard tells us why last week's failed vote might actually hold some promise for the future. It's Tuesday, June 25th. I'm Sonia Cho Swanson, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. So, Howard, what happened at the Caesars shareholder meeting last week in regards to smoking in casinos?
Well, it's fascinating, Sonia, because this is the first, this has been an issue going on for years, especially in Nevada.
I remember hearing about it in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a long time ago.
And I could talk to you about it in other states. But what's interesting is then one of the non-smoking groups, this Americans for Smoke-Free Casinos, they've been here for years protesting at G2E and all that, at the Global Gaming Expo. They rallied groups of shareholders from three different gaming companies, from Caesars, Bally's, and Boyd Gaming, and got these referendums and questions on their proxy statements for the annual shareholders meeting, which will happen once a year. Any issue on the shareholder meeting, very rarely there's some type of controversy. It's usually, you're voting on board of directors and they pass 99% to 1%, that kind of thing.
The boring stuff.
Yeah, very much. But what they did was they came up with a question that said, it was basically an advisory question, to have the company do a study on what would happen if they banned smoking in their properties. What would that mean for the company? Would it reduce revenues? Would it turn customers off? It was just a study. They said they put it out there. It got approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission for all three of these companies. And so it ended up on the proxy that the shareholders got to vote on it. Boyd and Bally shareholders rejected the question, which was as expected. They rejected it during votes in May. And then most recently, Caesars shareholders rejected it. But what's interesting is in all three votes, it failed big time. It was like Caesars, it was like 80%, 20%, something like that. But it was a high enough, you needed 5% favorable so they can bring it the same measure back next year in front of the shareholders.
Oh.
So that's the first time we've seen shareholders get active in this issue of whether smoking should be banned in casinos or not. And what is really interesting about this still also, you have companies like Caesars that operates casinos in about 16, 17 different states. In many of those states, smoking is banned in casinos. They operate in Maryland. Maryland has 6 casinos. Caesars operates the Horseshoe in Baltimore. All 6 casinos are non-smoking.
So theoretically, they already have a test case out there.
There's test case all over the place. Many of these states, when they agreed to legalize casinos, one of the clauses was no smoking. And that's in several markets. I don't know. I can't remember all of them offhand. I know Ohio is one. I know Maryland has been one because I've been to Maryland, and they have outdoor areas where smoking's allowed, but inside, no smoking at all. And so these companies have operated in non-smoking casinos around the country.
So this wasn't even a proposal to shareholders to ban smoking. It was a proposal to study the effects of banning smoking.
That was the whole idea. They just want to study it. Would it take away revenues? Would it keep customers away? And it's company-wide. So it wasn't just Nevada. But you have companies like Caesars that operates, multiple states with casinos that ban smoking. Bally's only has one casino in Nevada, and they up in Lake Tahoe. And so and Boyd has casinos in 10 other states besides Nevada.
Why is there this level of resistance to even studying the effects of smoking? What's the fear here?
I mean, the companies don't want to change things. I mean, they lobbied against it. The companies advised their shareholders to vote against it. I mean, that was very clear. They said that right off. They said vote against it. But you had pretty strong support from Caesars. I think it's just the fear of change. They don't want to see anything change in Nevada. They keep on worrying that, well, if you can't smoke here, they'll go to another state that allows smoking. That's not the case. I mean, California, most tribal casinos don't allow smoking, and California has very stringent anti-smoking laws. But it's in most states where we've seen traditional, they call them commercial casinos, Las Vegas style casinos, legalized. When states have legalized them, that smoking was banned. Massachusetts, Maryland are, the best examples of this. So
interesting.
It's just such a mindset, it seems, with the gaming industry.
Particularly here.
Here, especially. They don't want to ban it. We went through an issue back in the mid-2000s where they banned smoking in restaurants and bars and taverns. And a lot of these bars and taverns, their main interest, they have, it's a bar and tavern, they have food, but they have 15 slot machines up at the...
Exactly. Or the video pokers, right?
Video poker. And they threw out their food. They stopped serving food. And it got changed. They went back to the legislature to get it changed where you can have food in the place. First off, if you want to have food and not wall off the food area, the restaurant area, from smoking, then you can be 21 and over. That's it. Whereas...
Well, the Peppermill's a great example of that, right? Where you've got the fireplace room with all the smokers on one side and you've got all the diners and booths on the other side.
Very, very, yeah, that's what the change you've seen. A lot of these taverns have done that because they want to keep the families come in and the customers.
Well, let's actually go into that history then, because you mentioned there's a law change in 2000. So let's just back up and start from the beginning. The good old days of the Rat Pack. Everyone was smoking. No one thought they would ever die of cancer, ever. What's happened since then?
Well, there was never any push to ban.
Okay.
A small casino called Silver City banned smoking. And that casino's gone now, but when
was that?
Oh gosh, in the 90s, I would think it was.
Okay.
I can't, sometime in the 90s, early 2000s, but the casino's gone now. But they were the first that went ahead and banned smoking. It was a small property, it was inconsequential to anything, and it banned it. But then there was the ballot question that banned smoking in grocery stores and all over, public smoking ban.
When was that ballot question?
That was in 2006, the Clean Air Act. It exempted casinos, prohibited the use of tobacco products inside workplaces and most indoor public businesses, including restaurants. So bars and taverns fell into that. And that's why it was changed back in about a few years later, where you could you could have smoking if it's 21 and over, or you walled off your food area. So that's where the big change was. In casinos, even our corporate casinos now that we see in this restaurant, smoking is banned in the restaurants in all these locations. You don't see it happening. Smoking is banned in executive offices.
Oh. That's mighty convenient
because it's part of this whole workplace smoking, to ban smoking in the workplace. You have outdoor smoking areas, but that was the big change that you had. I remember back when this happened back in 2006. I worked at the Review Journal at the time, and all of a sudden the Review Journal newsroom went non-smoking, and all the smokers got kicked outside. So imagine that. But it's just the mindset, I think, of the casino operators has long been, if something's working, don't mess it up. And that's why they stop it here. It's never really been pushed any farther here. Whereas all over the country, as I said, in many states, casino smoking is been banned. And the casinos will talk about they brought in these new high grade air HVAC systems that blow all the smoke out of there. It doesn't really work that way.
It's never complete. I walked into the Durango the other day, and they also advertised their, amazing new HVAC system. Of course, I was hit with a wall of smoke when I walked in. It's just inevitable. That's how it works.
That's where it was. And then, what was interesting was the pandemic came when everything shut down for 90, whatever it was, 78 days. And then things started opening back up. They went ahead, the casinos went ahead, allowed smoking, but not at the table. Because remember, everybody had to wear masks.
Right.
So they allowed smoking, but you had to back away from the table and smoke like behind the table. You couldn't do it at the table. But then all that went away as soon as the masks came off, the cigarettes came out again, and that was that. So.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, CEO of CityCast. Or, as I can say now, thanks to a few weeks with Babbel, hola, soy David Plotz, el jefe de CityCast. What if in 2024 you've got a little bit better every day? When you're learning a new language with Babbel, that's exactly what you're doing. And if Babbel can help me start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, imagine what you could do in a full year. I got started with Babbel because I realized that my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker, and my son, who's in AP Spanish, were conspiring against me, or I thought they were conspiring against me in Spanish. I wanted to know what they were talking about. And now, thanks to literally just a few weeks of Babbel, I'm starting to be able to eavesdrop. It is rare that something so fun and simple, and Babbel is super fun and very simple, is also so useful. So here's a special limited time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
I just think these votes, to get back to these votes, it'll be fascinating to see how they push it next year, because now they have a year to plan ahead. I think they got Caesars was probably the highest percentage, about almost 20% of the shareholders said, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this study.
Right.
We only have one casino on the Strip that is non-smoking. That's Park MGM.
Which frankly is quite nice to walk through, because I'm revealing my bias here, but I love coming out of a casino and not reeking of cigarette smoke, but that's just me.
Park MGM was non-smoking during the pandemic. They left it as non-smoking. They said, and they've never changed. Now MGM, there wasn't targeted in this effort. Now they might be next year. We might see other companies get targeted in their shareholder meetings next year, but I mean, some change is going. It would think some change will happen. I mean, I don't know and I've never studied the numbers of smoking, is going down or.
So I can tell you that at least amongst younger folks, smoking has dropped dramatically, even since 2011. Amongst adults aged 18 to 24, it's dropped from about 19% to just under 5% nationally. So we're really seeing at least the younger folks trend downwards from smoking.
So you would think with a younger crowd, getting as they get older, and the younger crowds have found casinos, because casinos are everywhere in the country, basically. You would think that maybe the smoking would just go away here at some point, and they would just ban it inside casinos. During Global Gaming Expo, the G2E, they have the non-smoking groups used to protest out in front. Last year at G2E, they had a panel on smoking in casinos. There's a slot machine influencer. I was just writing about him for something else. Brian Christopher. He has in downtown at the
Plaza,
at the Union Plaza, at the Plaza. I'm old. I call it Union Plaza still. But the Plaza, he has a slot machine area, with his favorite games, but it's non-smoking.
Right.
He's a huge proponent of no smoking in casinos. So his slot area at the Plaza is non-smoking. So we see so we see that push coming.
The small inroads, yeah, maybe given those demographics, right, where it could be heading. But
Right.
It's interesting because our one of our hosts here at CityCast Las Vegas, David Figler, is a lawyer. He specializes in gambling addiction and folks who work in the industry. And we were having a conversation about this before I hopped on with you, because I was kind of picking his brain here, and
Yeah.
he brought up a provocative question as to why maybe in some ways smoking in casinos is almost like how Yucca Mountain is the third rail of Nevada politics. Maybe smoking in casinos is the third rail of the gaming industry. But he suggested people who have an addiction to smoking obviously have some addictive behaviors. And we're wondering, do casinos see chain smokers and, again, all-day gamblers as too important of an income stream to really ever ban smoking indoors?
Well, I mean, that's, and I've talked to David many times about problem gambling issues in the past. The casinos like to say they've pushed and responsible gaming, they call it. It's not problem gambling. It's not problem gambling anymore. It's responsible gaming. There's always got to be some kind of industry buzz. And this month is actually Responsible Gaming Month that is pushed by the American Gaming Association. But it's part of the effort of finding somebody that's sitting in a slot machine for 8 hours a day. They try to work against that. Casinos notice somebody there and they try to get people to take a break, get away. Now that person probably sitting at the slot machine, smoke, gambling hours a day, may have a cigarette going, constantly going 8 hours a day.
I've seen them.
It is. I mean, look, smoking is an addictive behavior. Gambling can be an addictive behavior. Maybe I'm addicted to like certain little games on my phone, that sometimes just to
Hopefully
get your,
not to the level where you need intervention.
No, exactly. But it's just, it just takes your mind off you, get your mind thinking on something else. I don't understand why the casinos fight it. The game industry fights it so much, especially here in Vegas, over this fear that something's going to change. They don't want to change the habits of they have big players coming from other areas. You look at the airport set up. The airport had to be non-smoking as part of the law, the 2006 law. But Reed Airport, they have smoking rooms. In those rooms are slot machines at the airport. If you notice, they have smoking rooms that you can go into now. And so, is this the industry? It's just something that just doesn't seem to want to change, and I don't know what it will take for a change to happen in Vegas. Maybe, if this shareholder vote does well next year, I think they'll be a little more active next year in pushing it with the shareholders and try to move it forward and for the casinos, the gaming companies do a study. Hopefully we'll see where it goes. I mean, I don't smoke. I don't like being around it. It is what it is. So
it's interesting to me that this group advocating for this smoking study is kind of going this route of the shareholder meeting and not, state legislation.
Well, the legislation.
Who is this group?
The legislation is the Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights.
And so they're like a nonprofit advocacy group?
Yes, a nonprofit advocacy group. But they brought into this the United Auto Workers Union in Las Vegas. The United Auto Workers it's been here for about a decade now. They represent dealers and casino floor people. Because the Culinary Union does not represent gaming employees. It's all non-gaming employees.
They do the bartenders and the cocktail waitresses.
Bartenders, cocktail waitresses, guest room attendants, in that sense. The United Auto Workers came in years ago and gained representation for dealers and casino floor personnel. So they were brought in with the Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights to push these shareholder questions.
So this is really kind of a worker safety issue then.
Exactly. I mean, dealers sit there, you're getting smoke blown at you, 8 hours a day.
Right.
Yeah. Their insurance costs are higher because they're not, even though they're not a smoker, they're considered a smoker. So they came in and they pushed this. So that's why I say, I just think we're going to see a little bit stronger push maybe in a year. They might target maybe another company or two, one of these publicly traded companies, but the fact that you got 20% of the shareholders of Caesars to vote on this advisory question, basically, vote in favor of it, even though the company was against it, that's kind of a big number. It's kind of that's kind of a win for the anti-smoking groups.
Interesting. All right, so they're going the corporate route. Is there any chance we'll see anything in the 2025 legislative session when it comes to smoking in casinos?
I don't think so. I mean, I haven't heard any rumblings on that. We haven't seen anything in the legislative sessions the last, I don't know, since it was brought up in over a decade ago almost. I haven't heard anything on that. I think the biggest gaming question in the legislative session is going to be the lottery, if that's going to, because if AJR 5 is passed again. Remember, it passed this year or last year. If it passes again, then the lottery question goes to the voters to decide. The culinary is going to be pushing that. I haven't heard any rumblings yet on smoking coming up in the legislature, but we'll be watching, I guess.
Okay,
We'll see.
Howard, any last predictions? Let's see, any other properties that you think could ban smoking, or where do you think this might be headed in the next few years?
I don't know if Hard Rock, when they redo the Mirage in
That could
3
be
years,
interesting.
it's going to be closed for about 2-3 years, while they do that. If that will be non-smoking. You have to remember the big venues that have opened: Allegiant Stadium, the Sphere, even Las Vegas Ballpark, the outdoor. They're all non-smoking. All venues like that are non-smoking. If the A Stadium happens, that will be non-smoking. I mean, it's just those all fall under the no smoking legislation here in the laws we have in Nevada. Casinos are still exempted, and I don't see that changing unless something drastic happens again. So who knows?
Well, Howard, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed being on the CityCast, and look forward to coming on again and whenever you need me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, go tell a friend, tell 3 friends, tell 5 friends. Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Las Vegas. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.